Have you ever stood at the checkout, stared at the total for a few seconds, even though you knew you could afford it, because what felt heavy was not the bill, but something happening inside your mind? Strangely, the more money some people have, the more guilt they can feel when spending it, as if every dollar leaving quietly takes a little sense of safety with it. Many people spend decades working so they no longer have to worry about money, yet when they finally reach that point, the worry simply changes into something else. The bank balance grows larger, yet the mind still lives in survival mode, while the world sees success and the person still feels only one step away from running short. This is the financial paradox people rarely discuss, because living without money and feeling unsafe with money are not always the same experience. Perhaps the issue is not being too careful with money, but spending so many years practicing survival that enjoying the results begins to feel unfamiliar. This video is not about becoming rich faster, but about why money you already worked hard to accumulate can gradually become harder to spend. Because while your account balance may have grown over time, your fear may also have grown beside it, quietly changing the way you move through everyday life without you noticing. Since childhood, many of us were taught that saving money is a good habit, but the mind does not always recognize when that healthy habit quietly turns into fear. As financial conditions improve, peace of mind seems like it should grow too, yet many people become increasingly protective of every dollar they own. They are no longer afraid of running out of money today, because what they fear is losing the sense of security they spent years building. That fear often appears quietly through everyday choices like delaying a vacation, avoiding needed purchases, or feeling guilty after one slightly expensive dinner. Those small decisions are often praised as financial discipline, even though they may quietly reveal that fear is still in control. At that point, money slowly stops functioning as a tool for living and instead becomes a fence built higher to protect a feeling of safety. The higher that protective fence becomes, the harder it feels to step outside while life experiences continue waiting on the other side. That is why some people appear wealthy on paper while still living as though every day is a financial emergency because their sense of security never fully recovered. How can someone end up with more money while feeling less freedom than before? To explore that question, we have to look beyond the account balance and examine how past experiences quietly shape the way the mind treats money today. Psychology describes a pattern called survival mode, where years of financial pressure teach the brain to treat every loss as a threat to safety. A bank balance can improve within a few years, but fear built over decades often stays on a much longer time horizon. That is why many successful people still compare prices repeatedly before buying something that would barely affect their financial position. They are not necessarily cheap because they are simply living with an internal alarm that never realized the emergency already ended. Every expense feels like losing something, even when it is simply a normal part of enjoying the results of years of work. Without noticing it, success slowly becomes measured by how much money stays untouched instead of the quality of everyday life. The larger the balance grows, the stronger the anxiety becomes whenever there is even a small drawdown in that number. Financial freedom is often imagined as freedom from anxiety, yet for some people money only changes what the anxiety is attached to. The fear once focused on not having enough money now becomes the fear of losing the money that is already there. When the same emotion keeps directing financial decisions, wealth can gradually become a psychological burden instead of simply a financial resource. Many financial advisors describe clients with substantial assets who still experience intense anxiety whenever they actually need to spend their own money. They may spend decades building wealth, yet guilt often appears the moment it becomes time to enjoy what they have accumulated. A common example involves retirees who continue living extremely modestly, even though their savings could comfortably support a much easier lifestyle. They keep saying, maybe later, even though health and energy do not always wait for that decision. The book Die with Zero highlights a paradox where many people accumulate money faster than they create memorable life experiences. As wealth keeps growing, opportunities to enjoy life gradually shrink, because time often moves faster than the balance inside an account. People often treat experiences as if they can be purchased at any moment, even though every experience has its own ideal point in time. A distant trip at 30 does not carry the same emotional experience when it happens 10 years later because life itself has changed, not the money. This is a cost that rarely appears in financial records because it is measured not in money but in years spent postponing life. Perhaps the bigger question is no longer whether someone has become wealthy enough, but whether they still remember why they wanted wealth in the first place. Maybe the real goal of financial freedom is not collecting as much money as possible, but reducing the fear that quietly shapes every financial decision. That shift begins when money is viewed not only as something to protect, but also as a tool that supports everyday life. One interesting perspective is giving every dollar an emotional purpose instead of only a financial one, because not every expense exists to produce measurable returns. Some expenses create things that are much harder to measure, including memories, health, stronger relationships, and shared time. Imagine two people with the same level of wealth, while one keeps collecting assets and the other spends part of it creating meaningful experiences. 10 years later, their account balances may look similar even though the stories behind their lives feel completely different. This is not about spending recklessly, but about spending with intention instead of letting fear quietly make every choice. When every expense has a clear purpose, money stops feeling like a constant source of anxiety and returns to being a practical tool. Not every investment pays dividends because some create stronger relationships, better health, and moments that cannot be recovered later. Perhaps wealth begins to matter differently when it changes the way daily life is, experienced instead of simply becoming a larger number. One idea that changed how many people think about wealth comes from the concept of die with zero, and its message challenges a belief that many of us treat as normal. The book does not argue that every dollar should be spent, but it questions the habit of postponing life for a future that may never arrive in the same form. Time keeps shrinking while money can still be earned again, yet many people quietly treat both as if they carry the same value. Climbing a mountain at 30 creates a different experience than attempting the same climb when your body can no longer keep up. The same is true for traveling with your parents, playing with a young child, or sharing dinner with an old friend because those moments quietly lose the chance to be repeated. Many people carefully calculate investment compounding, yet almost never think about the compounding value of memories that continue to be postponed. The longer an experience is delayed, the greater the chance that its best version quietly disappears, and that loss cannot simply be replaced with more money. This may be the biggest paradox in personal finance because people work for freedom while often forgetting to use it when time is still available. Healthy wealth is not only about keeping assets growing over the long term, but also about recognizing when part of those assets become lived experiences. In the end, money is only a tool for exchange, while the experiences collected across a lifetime quietly shape who we become. Maybe after all of this, the question about wealth becomes much simpler, not how much you've managed to accumulate, but what you're actually trying to protect. If the answer is security, that's deeply human because almost everyone has lived with the fear that one day their money might not be enough. But there's a big difference between protecting the future and continuing to live as if the hardest financial chapter never ended. Wealth doesn't always change someone's life, but the willingness to use it according to personal values can change how that life is experienced. Financial peace may not come from avoiding every expense, but from knowing your money is supporting the life you actually want to live. If your bank balance becomes much larger someday, hopefully your comfort with enjoying life grows alongside it. In the end, money is only a number until it becomes time, health, experiences, and the people we care about. Maybe feeling alive doesn't always require more money, but simply allowing yourself to enjoy the results of a very long journey. That's the success paradox that rarely enters everyday conversations about money. In the end, the goal of money isn't simply having more of it for longer, but living while there's still time to experience life. A small shift in perspective can change how you think about money, from asking how much you can save to asking what kind of life you are building. The question sounds simple, yet many people become skilled at managing money without ever planning the life they want to live. When money becomes the destination, no number feels sufficient. But when it returns to being a tool, financial decisions follow a different direction. Instead of labeling savings only as investments or assets, many people also attach them to family time, health, experiences, and peace of mind. Savings can represent more than growing balances on a screen when each amount is connected to the life someone hopes to experience. The people who appear most financially calm are not always those with the largest balances, but those with a different relationship with timing. Some opportunities arrive only once before quietly disappearing without waiting for anyone. Financial wisdom also includes recognizing when money changes into memories that remain long after the spending is over. Real wealth may exist not only inside an account balance, but also in the experiences made possible after money serves its purpose. Spending no longer appears as losing numbers alone, but as turning those numbers into moments that can be lived. For years, we've been told that the goal of personal finance is simply having more money, even though the destination may actually be having more moments that are worth remembering. If this video made you look at money differently, then we're moving in the same direction toward a healthier relationship with it, rather than simply chasing a bigger balance. At the margin, the conversation goes beyond investing, debt, and living costs by exploring how money quietly shapes the way people think, feel, and move through everyday life. Sometimes the biggest financial challenge isn't sitting inside a bank account, but inside the story the mind quietly repeats every single day. If you enjoy conversations like this, you can subscribe because there are many more discussions about money that millions of people quietly experience without realizing it. Now, here's a question that may matter more than the number in your bank account. What is one life experience you've kept postponing even though you could already afford it? What do you think has really kept you from taking that step? And would you share it in the comments if it feels familiar to you? Thank you for spending your time here today, and I'll see you in the next episode.